Don't tell anybody else. So I just finished an audiobook read by Tom Baker. Yeah, Tom Baker. It was called Doctor Who Scratchman, and I had to do a video about it. It was one of those things where I haven't felt this way about a thing in a long time, where I've gone, oh, I have to do a video about that now that I finished it and I now know everything that happens in it and I can comment on the whole narrative. But halfway through listening to Scratchman, I was like, holy shit, this is so freaking good, and I haven't seen anybody talk about this that much online, so I'm going to do a video about it. I feel compelled. So here I am. What a miracle, right? So that should be evidence enough to maybe make you interested to go out and read this or listen to it for yourself. It's just an audiobook right now, or if you have a Kindle, you can download it on there, or if you, I think you can just read those digital files on Amazon Reader or whatever the hell you do. I don't know. You figure it out. I just listen to the audiobook on Audible like a sensible human being. And that's what you should probably do too, at least for now, because man oh man, Tom Baker can read the hell out of a book, especially one that he has written. I've never listened to an audiobook read by him before, you know, not a big surprise, but he has done like a lot of Doctor Who audio stuff in recent years. I've never even tapped into that. I did watch the animated Shada movie. I mean, it's not really a movie, it's just the episodes that they were going to produce, but it was sort of packaged as a movie. I watched that when that came out, and I won't talk about how I felt about it right now. I want to do a video about that at some point, but I did hear his performance in that, and that's essentially, he does appear actually in one scene on screen, older, and plays the Doctor. But most of it, it's just his, you know, older voice with animation. So I am familiar with his current, you know, the current way he plays the Fourth Doctor, and how much it's pretty much just exactly the same as it was back in the day, and how, you know, awesome that is that we still get that joy of being able to hear the Fourth Doctor as he was. And that at first, you know, just jump-started my brain when I was listening to this. You know, as you would expect, I like Doctor Who a lot. And, you know, Tom Baker is one of the most iconic, not only just like, you know, people to play the Doctor, because, you know, all the actors have their own reasons to be remembered fondly and as a big deal in their own right. But, you know, he played the character for 7 years, longer than anybody else. He was the one that had his face, like when people talked about Doctor Who, it was his face usually for a long time that was, you know, put next to it. And to be honest, his personality and the way he played the character is what got me into the classic Doctor Who. You know, I was into new Doctor Who for like a couple months, and I was like, I should probably try some classic Doctor Who. And his stuff was the stuff that got me the most, like, oh, this is very, very fun, and also interesting as straight up science fiction, as the new show was to me as well. So then, over many years, I have since gotten into Hartnell, Troughton, John Pertwee very much as well, and all the other Doctors in the classic era. So Tom Baker was the start of it, though, for me. So this book, like I said, and it just immediately like re-energized my brain. You know, I haven't been on necessarily like a Doctor Who kick lately, but this is instantly just made me go like, oh, let's start again. Even though Resolution just came out a couple weeks ago, so I was kind of like, oh, we'll simmer Doctor Who for a while. But then this came out, and it was just like, nope, open up BritBox again, because we're binging Who. So let's talk about it, shall we? So Scratchman, Doctor Who Scratchman, if you don't know, was a movie that was supposed to be made in the mid-70s, written by Tom Baker, and some of the ideas were conceived by Ian Masters? I should look this up. He's the guy who played Harry Sullivan in season 12 and 13 of Doctor Who. Why does he appear at the end of 11? He's mentioned at the end of 11. I don't think he appears, though. That's John Pertwee's last season. But he is very prominent in seasons 12 and 13, and he is a delight. He's one of my favorite companions, without a doubt. But he was a very short-lived companion. And apparently, according to Tom Baker anyway now, the reason for that is because he was a younger Doctor at the time, and the function, quote-unquote function, from the producer's standpoint of the show, of the companions, was to be the young people running around doing the action for an older Doctor. That's what they were when Hartnell was a thing anyway, so that was their tradition. But And, that had been broken with Troughton, I even feel. Like, Troughton wasn't like that, and Pertwee certainly wasn't like that. But that was the sort of stereotype that the producers had always attached to the companions. But when you get to Tom Baker, it visually becomes, like, he doesn't even look like an old person anymore. So, he said that was why Harry didn't last long, and that Sarah Jane wanted to, I should use their real names, Elizabeth Sladen wanted to stay on longer than she really did, because she just thought the producers were kind of sick of her, like oh, we don't need you anymore, so we're just gonna get a new companion for him, because we don't need this old stereotypical thing we thought we needed. And from a certain degree, I love Harry and Sarah Jane. They're two of my favorite companions. But at the time, I could have almost seen that, because we did have that. That was the cliche for a long time. Was, oh, there's a young guy in the TARDIS who does all the action, and there's a young girl who does all the, getting kidnapped and screaming and a lot of the rational thinking, and then there's the Doctor to just be a madman. That's always been the basic formula even. But they have changed it up so many times, and the Doctor's changed so much, and his companions change so much when they're with him, that stereotype only works in certain scenarios and only works as a basic thrust for conflict usually. Anyway, so my point with all that was just to say, despite the fact that Harry didn't last long, he had a very big impact on Tom Baker's run, I feel. They were great friends, apparently. And without him, I don't know if we ever would have gotten Scratchman. So we definitely have to be gracious to him for that, especially now that we have this book, and we have this audiobook by Tom Baker. But according to Tom Baker, since Ian didn't last long on the show, he didn't get to last much into the script writing process on the movie. And there was another guy who, I can't remember his name. I meant to look up fucking Harry's name, and I just never did because I was talking. Harry Sullivan, Doctor Who. He was going to direct the movie, this other guy, and he was going to do the actual, like, oh, I wrote the screenplay that we're going to shoot the movie based on. But, Tom Baker actually wrote, the draft that was going to be turned into that. He came up with the story. So most of the ideas can be credited to his brain. And I say that only because I was very curious as to, how much of this was a collaborative process and how much of this is just, us opening up the grand gates of his brain and walking in and going, oh my god. And I think there's a lot of both, but like I said, Ian gave him a lot of the conceptual ideas, and then Tom Baker went off and started writing. That's the story that he tells. So, let's again confirm his name. I'm sorry this is taking so long. You guys are probably all screaming at me that I'm a fucking idiot. Well, I'm glad I did, though. It's Ian Marter, not Marster or Marston or whatever the fuck whatever Red Dead Redemption fucking shit I said. So I am glad I looked that up, actually. And it says his first appearance is in Robot, which is in Tom Baker's first story. But again, I'm positive that he's mentioned in Pertwee's last story, Planet of the Spiders. So anyway, I'm glad I looked that up, because like I said, I do love me some Harry Sullivan, and so does Tom Baker, clearly, because this book is just filled with so much revelry for both companions, Sarah Jane and Harry Sullivan. A just pinpoint way of writing those characters and making them feel not only exactly like they did if you were binge watching seasons 12 and 13 again of classic Doctor Who, but if you were almost hanging out with them and really inside their heads, like you were reading a book. Imagine that. So, that element of it is so satisfying to me, both as a Doctor Who fan, but also as somebody who's reading a book. And I think that's another reason why this really stood out to me. Because it's not just this opus of a Doctor Who experience, which it very much is. It's also a damn good book. And I went, Tom Baker is a fucking great writer, and I'm probably going to read other stuff that he's written now. He has written quite a few other things, actually, both before, and I think he's working on stuff now. So that excites me. I'm excited to see what else he can do. I mean, I would love him to write some more Doctor Who stuff after this, but, this was such a massive thing, that encompasses a great deal of the franchise and its tropes and its history, that I can understand if maybe he needs to, like, write something else in order to, you know, keep the creative juices flowing. But like I said, he nailed the world and the characters here. You know, not to mention the Doctor himself. You would almost, not to say, oh, you would expect that, like, it's this easy thing, but he does it like it's an art form. The story, and this was another thing that I didn't know about the actual book until I went into it, which was a nice surprise. And like I said, I know I said this was non-spoiler, but this is just a basic setup thing. And it's just one of the foundations of the story, which makes me, you know, oh, this is why this worked so well, was that it's a first-person narrative. The Doctor tells the story. And, you know, that was just like, wow. Especially the Fourth Doctor to do that. It feels necessary after a while. It feels like, oh, this couldn't have been done any other way, because the world wouldn't have felt like this if we didn't do it this way. There's a certain mystique attached to the Doctor. Obviously, the show is called Doctor Who. And the show does a very good job of getting you inside of his head while also keeping him very distant. And I think this book nails that as well. And that's really awesome, because it gets us about as much in his head as we've ever been, I think, and still keeps a lot distant. And the narrative just does, it's just so well written. Man, Tom Baker wrote the hell out of this book. I know he did have a little help touching it up, but I think that a lot of that was organization. There's some not semi-complex, that's hyperbole, but, and potentially an oxymoron, but somebody did help him touch this up, he said, when he was finally like, alright, we're gonna release it. I want the world to know. I want the world to have a peek. So, I don't know how much he actually got involved with the writing with Tom Baker, but it doesn't seem like very much to me. This seems very raw Baker, and I loved it. But it seems to me like he maybe went, oh, well, you should separate this into parts, this into different books. This should be mentioned here. Maybe stuff like that. Like, you know, little organizational things. I think. That's the way it came off to me while I was listening to it. But yeah, it was pretty raw Baker. And if you want that, you're going to get it. And you should just stop watching this, hop over to Audible, and just do it, man. So, I haven't talked much about, you know, exactly what the story is about. But like I said, this video was intended to be, go listen to it for yourself. Obviously, if you're a Doctor Who fan, I almost feel like this video would be redundant to you as a recommendation anyway. But if you are a Doctor Who fan and you haven't heard about it, you're not interested in it at all, I would advise you to get interested, because it's not only very good, but it's a very thoughtful and insightful and thoughtful, same thing, whatever. But it's a darn good analysis of the franchise on the whole, from maybe one of the most prolific parts of it. So, I think it's kind of required reading if you're a Doctor Who fan, in my opinion. So yeah, kind of leave it there if you're a Doctor Who fan. But as a story, like, you know, there are people, it's like, oh, I'm not really into classic Doctor Who. I'm not really into Tom Baker's run. Like, oh, you know, like, if those people exist, I've not met them, mind you. But if those people exist, I still think you should give this a shot if you like Doctor Who. Even if you're vaguely interested in Doctor Who, this might be a thing to get you interested more. I'm not saying necessarily that if you're not even a Doctor Who fan at all, you could read this and go, oh, this is just a great fucking book, and now I'm into Doctor Who. There are some deep cuts in this, and that's part of the thing that makes it so awesome, because clearly Tom Baker got caught up on some Doctor Who, and that just makes me so happy. But yeah, no, there's some deep cuts in this, so if you're not a Whovian, it might be a little difficult for you, but I definitely think that you would be interested and want to find out if you did read this. And this is a well-written, tense, frickin' fun book, regardless of the fact that it's got Doctor Who written on the cover, and regardless of the fact that it's got the Doctor and his companions in it. Scratchman is a great antagonist, man. Awesome. There have been many characters in Doctor Who like him, and if you know anything about the concept that the movie was supposed to be, you'll know that, and that it inspired a whole bunch of shit after that they did, and many villains, and many plots. But, like I said, man, Raw Baker, the way it's done here, it just feels fresh, and like there isn't this whole backlog of, oh, we've done this in Doctor Who before. Maybe it's because it's a book and it feels so unhindered by any kind of budget or the fact that it's a TV show, but it definitely works and feels distinct from all the times that they've done things similar to Scratchman on the show. And I think that's really impressive. Especially since if you guys follow my channel, you'll know that I was a little bit burnt out on Doctor Who a couple of years ago. Very much so, in fact, in the midst of Peter Capaldi's run. Despite the fact that Peter Capaldi's my favorite modern Doctor, you know, analyze that however you will. But I think it was the producers and the writers at the time, I'm not going to name names, that had gotten me a little bit burnt out. And something like this just makes me think back on that time and go, I don't even know what I was thinking, because this is just filled with so much love and affinity for the franchise, and shows why it has so much value to everyone. That it just really, again, it really struck me on like every note as both a Doctor Who fan and as somebody who likes books. It works, man. So I don't think there's really much else to say, to be honest, because I think you should just go off and read it for yourself. The hardcover's not out yet, so you can't actually read a physical book of it yet. It comes out like February 16th or something. I have it pre-ordered, so I will have a copy of it. I'm not going to do another video on it after I've read that. Maybe if Dylan and I ever start doing podcasts again, and he's read it, we'll probably do a podcast about it, which would be a lot longer and more in-depth than we do spoilers. But for the moment, I think I'm going to leave it there. So, Doctor Who, Scratchman, if you have Audible, go get it. If you have Amazon Kindles, go read it. I certainly did, and I loved the hell out of it. So, there's people yelling downstairs now, and maybe I have to go sort that out. So, until I come to surprise you all again,